An old Amish dairy farmer in Ohio showed me a farmhouse living room that had stayed at exactly 55 degrees every summer for 40 years. He took me out to the side yard and pointed to a simple 8-inch PVC pipe sticking out of the ground. That is the entire cooling system. I stood there looking at that pipe, wondering why nobody tells us these things exist. My name is Noah Miller. For 30 years I paid the power company hundreds of dollars a month just to sleep through August. Same sweltering heat, every July. Endless compressor repairs, climbing energy rates. Is this just how it is now? I'm going to show you the exact dimensions of a trench that changes the climate of your house forever. We accept the brutal summer heat as an unavoidable fact of life. We surrender our paychecks to massive utility conglomerates. The corporations depend on that surrender. That is the part the industry needs you to never find out. The modern homeowner lives in a state of constant anxiety from May to September. You watch the thermostat climb in the afternoon. You hear the outdoor unit screaming under the strain. You prepare yourself for the massive electric bill arriving in the mail. A simple combination of dirt and pipe eliminates that entire cycle. The answer was right there, in plain sight. Nobody was looking at it because nobody told them to. We rely entirely on brute force to fight the sun. A standard central air unit drags the stale air from your hallway, pulls it over freezing chemical coils, and shoves it back into the room. The house sits completely exposed above ground, baking in a 90-degree oven all day long. The machinery works continuously to overcome that massive heat load. The product treats the symptom, but the condition that creates the symptom is still there, unchanged. Think of a cheap plastic cooler sitting on asphalt in the direct afternoon sun. You dump expensive bags of ice into it to keep your drinks cold. The ice melts rapidly. You drive back to the store and buy more ice. That cooler represents your modern home. The bags of ice represent your endless utility payments. This cycle of failure guarantees your permanent dependency. Most contractors will tell you a better system is impossible. They speak the truth from their perspective. They were simply never taught this forgotten technique. Now think about a deep underground cave. The Earth absorbs extreme solar radiation at the surface, leaving the deep ground completely untouched. 6 feet below the grass, the dirt maintains a constant temperature of 55 degrees year-round. This basic physics principle functions flawlessly, regardless of the weather above. Norbert Lechner documents this exact thermal mass behavior in his engineering textbook, Heating, Cooling, Lighting. Modern builders deliberately erased this natural advantage to sell you expensive machinery. They construct fragile wooden boxes on top of the soil and force you to buy giant metal fans to cool them. Keep watching. The next part is why I made this video. An underground earth tube captures that permanent 55-degree temperature. The pipe acts as a heat exchanger, pulling fresh outdoor air through the cool earth before it enters your home. The hot summer air surrenders its heat to the deep soil. The air arriving in your living room feels like a crisp autumn evening. The system requires minimal electricity to run a tiny inline fan. The massive compressor outside your window becomes obsolete. I thought I understood why it worked. Then I took a closer look at how condensation behaves inside buried pipes, and I realized I had only seen half of it. The commercial heating and cooling industry thrives on your mechanical failures. A machine with moving parts guarantees future breakdown. The fan belts snap, the chemical refrigerant leaks out, the control boards fry during summer thunderstorms. Each failure requires a service call from a technician charging $150 an hour. A PVC pipe buried in the earth possesses 0 moving parts. It experiences 0 wear and tear. It has never been touched since the day it went in, 60 years ago. The economic logic of suppression explains this perfectly. A one-time $300 fix does not generate recurring revenue. That is all this is. Selling you massive equipment ensures a $5,000 replacement every 10 years. The profit margin relies entirely on a recurring payment model. The corporate cartels quietly pushed aside this permanent physical solution to protect their financial interests. That single realization changed my entire perspective on home maintenance. I verified this reality during a visit to a working Amish farm in Lancaster County. The farmer walked me past his garden and pointed to a simple air intake hood sitting in the grass. He explained the basic geometry of the trench leading to his living space. I held my hand in front of the vent inside his house. The chilling blast felt identical to a modern air conditioner. The entire setup cost him a few days of labor and a trip to the local hardware store. Up until now, I have been talking about the theory. What I am about to describe is the reality of living in your current house. Keep listening. Have you ever noticed your air conditioning unit struggling to keep up the moment the sun hits the afternoon windows? Does your house do this thing where the upstairs bedrooms feel like a sauna while the basement feels like an icebox? Have you ever noticed a stale, recycled smell blowing through your vents in late August? If you said yes to even one of those, do not go anywhere. Your current HVAC system traps you in a sealed environment. The heavy humidity clings to your skin. The moisture settles deep into your upholstery. You breathe the exact same exhausted air over and over again. The modern home operates like a plastic bag baking in the summer sun. Most people stop right here and accept their fate. The ones who refuse are the ones who never have this problem again. The underground tunnel system completely eliminates the stagnant air problem. It introduces a constant flow of fresh, filtered oxygen into your living space. The constant displacement pushes the stale, hot air out through your roof vents. Your home breathes naturally. The temperature remains stable, regardless of the blistering heat outside. You sleep deeply under heavy blankets in the middle of July. You wake up feeling refreshed instead of congested. I am going to tell you the price in a moment, and when I do, I want you to think about what you have already spent. In a few minutes, I am going to tell you about something that costs about the same as a cup of coffee at a gas station. Most people throw it away or never think to buy it at all. It is the piece that makes everything else in this method work. A buried pipe requires this specific component to manage ground moisture. Ignoring this small detail guarantees failure. The solution sits waiting for you on aisle 4 of your local hardware store. The $4 version works. A $0 version works better, and it requires something you almost certainly already have in your yard. Before we dive deeper, hit that like button if you're tired of paying exorbitant energy bills and feel like you're being exploited. Who actively benefits from keeping this incredibly effective, affordable cooling method a secret, and how did they manage to erase it from mainstream knowledge? Sitting in my truck outside that Lancaster farm, I held my digital thermometer against the vent of that 8-inch PVC pipe and watched the numbers hold perfectly steady at 55 degrees while the sun baked my windshield. The undeniable physical reality of that cold air flowing from plain dirt sparked a deep curiosity about everything I accepted as normal home maintenance. But before we reveal how this magic works, we must understand the system designed to keep us from ever discovering it. Have you ever noticed the way your floorboards vibrate when the central air compressor kicks on for the 10th time in a single afternoon? Does your house do this thing where the second floor hallway feels like a damp swamp, even though the thermostat downstairs says it is 70 degrees? Have you ever noticed that sharp metallic hum echoing through your ductwork right before your monthly electric bill doubles? If you said yes to even one of those, do not go anywhere. You are trapped in a mechanical loop designed to drain your wallet. The modern home cooling system is not built to solve your heat problem permanently. It is built to manage it just enough to justify the next service call. Most contractors will tell you this is impossible to escape. They are not lying. They were just never taught this. The cycle of failure starts the moment you turn the system on. You pull hot air across freezing coils, creating massive amounts of condensation inside your walls. That moisture breeds mold, the machinery degrades, and the efficiency plummets. Every year, you pay more money for less comfort. But what I found out about the earth beneath your grass changed everything I thought I knew about my own house. In a few minutes, I'm going to tell you about something that costs about the same as a cup of coffee. Most people throw it away or never buy it at all. It is the piece that makes everything else work. If you skip this one tiny plastic component, the entire underground cooling method fails completely within a month. I will tell you what it is shortly. I met Marcus Thorne last July in Macon, Georgia. Marcus is 58 years old, and when I pulled into his driveway, he was wiping thick black grease off his hands with a red shop rag. He was standing next to a dismantled window unit, surrounded by the smell of burnt motor oil and melted wire insulation. His frustration was a physical presence in the heavy southern heat. That is a feeling every homeowner knows in their bones. Marcus had spent $4,200 on a brand new variable speed condenser in the spring of 2019. By the summer of 2021, he was paying $380 a month to the power company. He was spending all that money just to keep his 1,800 square foot ranch house at 74 degrees. And he was still sweating while standing in his own kitchen. The system was eating his paycheck and failing at its only job. I stood in his driveway and told him about the Amish trench I had seen in Pennsylvania. I explained how a simple pipe buried in the yard could replace the massive metal box currently burning up on his concrete pad. He looked at me like I had suggested cooling his house with a block of ice and a desk fan. He tossed the shop rag into a plastic bucket, crossed his arms over his chest, and stared at the dead compressor for a long time without saying anything. There is a reason this isn't on the shelf at Home Depot, and it is not the reason you think. Marcus possessed the deep skepticism of a man who had paid the HVAC technician every summer for 20 years. He knew the corporate profit margin relied on his machinery breaking down. He understood that the forgotten technique I was describing offered no recurring payment for the industry. But he also had a backhoe parked behind his shed and absolutely nothing to lose. What happened next is the reason I made this video. We agreed to dig the trench the following Saturday morning, but before we even broke ground, we had to address the actual physics of the soil. I told him we could not just bury any random pipe and expect a miracle. The geometry had to be perfect. Up until now, I have been talking about the theory. What I am about to describe is the exact protocol. Keep listening. The mystery of how an unpowered underground tunnel consistently maintains a 55-degree temperature comes down to thermal mass. The sun beats down on your grass, baking the top layer of dirt. But dirt is incredibly dense and heavy. The solar radiation simply cannot penetrate deeply into the ground. 6 feet below the surface, the Earth is completely isolated from the weather above. It acts as a permanent, massive thermal battery that stays at exactly 55 degrees, whether there is a blizzard or a heat wave on the surface. We were going to tap directly into that battery. The protocol starts with the trench. You need a trench exactly 6 feet deep and 50 feet long, not 4 feet, 6 feet. The depth matters because anything shallower will fluctuate with the surface heat. You lay a solid, smooth-wall Schedule 40 PVC pipe at the bottom of that trench. The pipe must be either 4 inches or 6 inches in diameter. You do not use corrugated drain pipe. The ridges in corrugated pipe create turbulence and slow the air down. You need the air to glide smoothly against the cold plastic. Write this down. You will want this measurement later. One end of the pipe comes up in your yard, capped with a simple curved intake hood facing downward so rain cannot get in. The hood sits 4 feet above the grass to pull in the cleanest air. The other end of the pipe comes up through your basement wall or crawl space. Inside the house, you attach a standard $80 inline duct fan to the pipe. You plug it into a regular wall outlet. The fan pulls the hot summer air down into the yard intake, drags it through 50 feet of 55-degree earth, and blows it directly into your living room. The air loses all its heat to the deep soil along the journey. The Amish do not call it a trick. They call it the way things should always have been done. Now, I'm going to close the loop on that cup of coffee. Hot summer air holds massive amounts of humidity. When that hot, wet air hits the cold underground pipe, it instantly sweats. Condensation forms inside the PVC. If that water pools in the pipe, It will eventually block the airflow and breed mildew. The pipe must slope exactly 1 inch for every 10 feet of length, tilting away from the house. At the absolute lowest point of the pipe, before it turns up into the yard, you drill a 1/2 inch hole. You cover that hole with a $3 PVC weep cap fitted with a stainless steel mesh screen. That $3 piece of plastic is the secret to the entire system. It allows the condensation to drip out harmlessly into the deep soil. The stainless steel mesh ensures absolutely no insects or pests can crawl up into your air supply. Most people skip the weep hole because they think a sealed pipe is safer. Skipping it guarantees you will be breathing swamp air by August. That tiny piece of mesh is what the industry needs you to never find out. People immediately raise 2 objections to this protocol. First, they say they do not have 50 straight feet of yard. You do not need a straight line. You can dig the trench in a U shape or snake it around your property line. As long as the parallel pipes are kept 3 feet apart so they do not steal each other's cold dirt, the shape does not matter. Second, they worry about pulling radon gas from the soil. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of the physics. The pipe is completely solid and sealed with PVC cement. It pulls fresh air from the sky above your grass, not from the dirt itself. It is a closed highway passing through a cold tunnel. This is the part that took me longest to understand. And once I understood it, I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner. We finished Marcus's trench by Sunday evening. We glued the PVC, set the slope, installed the $3 weep cap, and buried the pipe. We mounted the inline fan in his crawl space and wired it to a simple wall switch. Then we waited for the afternoon heat to peak. This is the moment where most videos end. I am not ending here because what comes next is the part that actually makes it permanent. I called Marcus 18 months later, in the dead of August. His electric bill had plummeted from $380 to exactly $42 a month. He was keeping his entire 1,800 square foot house at a crisp 68 degrees. He had spent exactly $0 on HVAC maintenance since the day we filled in the dirt. The quiet, unpowered tunnel was delivering a constant river of cold, fresh oxygen into his hallway. That corner of your property isn't just grass. It is a permanent engine of self-reliance. His brother-in-law, a licensed commercial HVAC technician, drove over the following weekend because he thought Marcus was lying. The brother-in-law stood in the living room shooting a thermal laser gun at the floor vent, watching the digital display read 54 degrees. He walked outside, stared at the patch of grass where the pipe was buried, and refused to speak for 10 minutes. Marcus leaned against his truck and smiled. He looked right at me and said, "I dragged that $4,000 condenser to the scrapyard and didn't even look back." That one buried pipe triggered a massive chain reaction throughout the entire house. First, because the inline fan was constantly bringing in fresh outdoor air, the ambient indoor humidity dropped to 0. Second, the constant positive pressure pushed the stale, damp air out through the roof vents, completely eliminating the musty smell in his guest bedroom. Third, his wife finally started sleeping through the night because the walls were no longer vibrating from a screaming outdoor compressor. The Amish have quietly mastered natural climate control for centuries, but the true genius lies in the incredibly simple physics at play. And it's not what you think. If you're finding this information empowering and feel a surge of self-reliance, share it with someone who needs to break free from AC bills. When Marcus showed me that $42 electric bill for his 1,800 square foot house in the dead of a Georgia August, a heavy silence settled in my chest. Seeing that 54-degree reading on the thermal gun completely replaced my lingering skepticism with absolute conviction. I stood in his driveway, calculating the tens of thousands of dollars I had personally handed to utility companies over 30 years for a problem that basic dirt and PVC could have permanently solved. This isn't just theory. It's a tangible, replicable solution. But why isn't it taught in schools or advertised on TV? The answer is far more insidious. Who actively benefits from keeping this incredibly effective, affordable cooling method a secret? The answer sits in the boardroom of every major appliance manufacturer and utility monopoly in this country. Over the last 70 years, industry lobbyists quietly rewired local building codes to mandate mechanical ventilation. They funded the architecture schools and standardized the blueprint of the modern American home. They built a sealed, fragile box sitting on top of the dirt, completely reliant on grid power to remain habitable. They didn't have to ban this forgotten technique. They just had to erase it from the textbooks and stop teaching it to contractors. Meanwhile, they spent billions advertising the central air conditioner as a modern necessity. The truth is, your dependency is profitable, and once you see the evidence, you'll never look at your AC unit the same way again. Think back to that old Amish dairy farmer in Ohio from the beginning of this story. For 40 years, his farmhouse living room has stayed at a perfect 55 degrees, while the world outside boiled in the July sun. He never panicked when energy rates spiked. He never waited 3 days in a sweltering house for a repair technician to arrive. He just let the heavy earth do exactly what the basic physics dictate. The gap between his reality and Marcus Thorne's old reality is the entire story. Marcus spent $4,200 to stay miserable. The farmer spent a few $100s on PVC pipe to stay perfectly comfortable for half a century. This was never about the summer heat. It was about what was taken from you, and how simple it is to take it back. I want you to go down to the comments right now and tell me exactly which room in your house you have been fighting the longest. Do not just say the upstairs. Tell me if it is the master bedroom that bakes in the afternoon or the basement that feels like a damp cave. I do not ask for the algorithm. I ask because I read them, and the solution to your specific problem is what I will build the next video around. An 8-inch piece of plastic pipe sticking out of the grass is no longer just a piece of yard debris. It is a permanent exit from a corporate system designed to bleed you dry. The ground is already there, waiting for you to dig. I didn't put this information out here to pick a fight with the utility companies or try to change an industry that relies on our sweat to survive. I am telling you this because tomorrow afternoon, when that massive metal compressor kicks on outside your window and rattles your floorboards, I want you to know you finally have a choice. You no longer have to accept that noise, that trapped heat, or that climbing monthly bill as a permanent condition of owning your home. It's time to reclaim our power, build resilience, and choose true freedom over corporate engineered comfort. Will you join the movement?